talk about various things. This is the first time we've done lightning talks, so it's supposed to be about 15 minutes, but if we sort of go over, just be nice. We're learning.
Slowly make it loud.
Yeah. Mine varies depending on how much I ramble, so yeah, give us a bit of leeway there. We'll do questions at the end, so if you have any questions, you know, keep them to, and we'll bring them out at the end and you can ask whoever. I'm just going to do a quick run through of basically what web performance is for those that don't know, and then I'll just talk a little bit about some stats on why web performance is important to think about, and I'll quickly show you some tools, which I just realised I was supposed to pre-set up and I didn't, so we'll lose a little bit of time there, but never mind. So I'll get started. I just wanted to set the scene for you guys a little bit. I have heard people say before that it's really not that important, but there's no point spending all your time doing design, development and marketing if your website is slow, because people aren't going to come back and it's going to affect a lot of things. And I'll give you some reasons a bit later, but it is important, it is our responsibility, and think about that as we, all three of us, talk to you today about web performance. Don't think, no, I don't need to do that, because you do. So what is it? It's basically the time taken to deliver your content, the browser's response to page load requests, but also how the user perceives your page loading. So if they think it's loading slow or not, whether it is or not is irrelevant, really. So to sum that up really simply, it's basically how fast or slow your website feels. And I specifically use the word feels here, which we'll talk about later. So remember that, it's in italics. Just sort of points it out to you. So what is fast and what is slow? I kind of decided I'd do a bit of science for you today, talk about the brain. 100 milliseconds is how long the occipital lobe in your brain stores visual information as sensory memory. And after 100 milliseconds, it essentially resets and allows the eye to transmit more data. Yeah, more information. I say data because we're talking about performance. And Google researchers have found that if your page loads in less than 100 milliseconds, it gives the users the illusion of instantaneous response. So if you can achieve that, well done, because that's really hard, but it will make your website look like it's instant. But more realistically, 1 second is really good page load time, and the user will maintain a seamless flow of thought. When you start getting down to 5 to 10 seconds, the visitor's attention isn't really kept, and they start to get agitated, feel frustrated, and they also get this sense of abandonment, which is kind of a weird feeling to get about a website. And they're also less likely to return. This number here used to be 10 seconds, and that's what Nielsen said was a bad number, but after reading about a whole bunch of stuff, a lot of people are saying it's more like 5 now, so I just did 5 to 10 to cover our bases. So this goes back to that feels thing. There's actually 2 areas of web performance that you need to think about, and that's perceived performance and actual performance. Perceived performance is basically how fast the user thinks your website is, not actually how fast it is. So it doesn't really matter if your data says your website's loading in 1 second. If they don't think that it's loading in 1 second, it sucks to be you. I actually have a really interesting example of this that one of our designers talked about in a presentation they did to us. And it was that if you have a red background on your website and a blue background on your website, so same website, different colour backgrounds, people will think the red one is loading slower than the blue one, regardless of whether it is or not, because of the emotional response that you get from the colour red. And that is an excellent example of perceived performance, because it could be loading at 1 second and they might think that it's taking longer just because it's red background. So the ways that you achieve best perceived performance can actually vary to how you would get the actual fastest performance for a website. And other things like, if your website has some loading bars and they take more than 2 seconds to load, that can actually have a negative impact on your performance, and people will think that it's taking longer than it actually is. So a lot of people mask actual performance and try and improve the perceived performance by putting animations in to sort of do load animations. By the time the content's loaded, the animation's finished and the content's there. So they get this idea that it's loading faster than it is. And there's a whole bunch of other things. The critical path will be discussed later, which is a perceived performance fix. Actual performance is actually how long it takes for it to get from point A to point B. But it doesn't really mean that much if the user can't see it. So, but on the flip side to that, if your site's actual performance is really slow, then it doesn't matter what you do for your perceived performance, it's still going to be slow. So it's really important to think about both of these as one when you're thinking about web performance. So why do we do it? Because most of us work for business, the main things. Poor web performance impacts your conversion, your user engagement, your usability, and your SEO. And it is a fact that I found that mobile-friendly, fast websites will make you more money. So if you want to make more money with your websites and for your clients, web performance matters. Here are some cool stats for you. Site speed is one of Google's ranking metrics, although it's one of many. It still has an impact on your ranking, so of course important. But also 1 in 4 websites will abandon the website if it takes more than 4 seconds to load. 46% don't revisit poorly performing websites, and you have 5 seconds to engage visitors before they consider leaving. So if your website takes 4 seconds to load, that means you've got 1 second to convince them that your website's the one to be on. So really what you want to do is spend most of that 5 seconds for them to look at your content and cool marketing ideas or whatever. In that 5 seconds as well, if they're accessing it on a mobile, 74% of mobile users will leave if it takes longer than 5 seconds. So that's a pretty high number, you don't want to lose them. But this one is my favorite. I came across this and I was like, what? Visitors would rather spend more time browsing elsewhere than waiting for a few seconds for the right website to load. So that means that we, as people, would rather troll the internet looking for the cat pictures than we would using a website that had all of the cat pictures on it because it takes a few extra seconds to load. And if you think about that, if your website performs poorly and they've left to go look somewhere else, they're not going to come back because they could be in that 47%. So it's very important. One more thing I'll just mention on this before I move on to the tools. The Obama campaign actually, they shaved 3 seconds off their page load time and made an extra $31 million in donations. And Firefox estimated that if they took 2.2 seconds off their page load time, they would get over 10 million more downloads of their browser. So something to think about if you're trying to get people to use your product. So I'll just go into some of the tools that you can use to actually check to see what your what your website is performing like, which you can then take that and use the techniques that you'll be shown a bit later. So the first one is Google Page Speed Insights. And that will measure your mobile and your desktop separately and give you some suggestions on what you can fix. It will measure the above the fold and content and then the full page load, and then it gives you a score, and they recommend to aim for 85 or higher. Now I just want to show you something with this because I thought this was really funny when I went to type it in. So this is Google Page Speed Insights here. I like to type Google in because, let's see what they get. So it analyzes, they don't get 85 for their mobile. And what I think is really important to remember about that is just because Google says you should do it doesn't mean you should. They're not even listening to themselves. And like I've had things on here before where it's like, oh, you should optimize your images. You'll save 1%. I could, or I could go do something else. So just have a think about it. Use your common sense. Not everything that they suggest is going to be possible for every project that you work on. So just keep that in mind. I'm just going to load up the other one. This next tool is my favourite for testing web performance. It's really good. It does take a little bit to load, so let's go back into this. So web page test is my favourite. You can, actually on Google Page Speed, you can get a Chrome extension for that as well, which you can use to test like your dev sites. Really handy. Web page test, you can actually hook into Docker if you use that and have a dashboard with all of your charts and stuff that it gives you. And it'll let you do heaps. You can customize the location, the browser, the internet speed. It'll give you heaps of stuff. I have not used them all. First view and repeat view page load times. It'll also give you suggestions of what you can fix. Not presented as nicely as Google, but I'm sure most of you can deal with that. My favourite part of it is the film strip view of loading time, which is really super cool. So this is some of the data that you get given, and you can see here, first view it takes 6.74 seconds, and repeat view is 5.4. But where's the? I hate the way this website looks. It's so freaking horrible. But you get heaps of information and data from this website that you can go through and have a look in. You get the performance review. It gives you a checklist of things that you've done and things that you haven't done, whether you've failed or not. There's a bit of a scorecard up here. Where is the bit that I like the most? I always forget where it is because the website's so hard to really look at. Can't find it.
Screenshot.
No.
Show slow.
It's not screenshot. It's in here somewhere. Maybe it's not.
Go back to the summary and you will see in the slideshow right hand side. Is that it?
No. Might be this. No. Anyway, I'll see if I can find it for you later. Basically what it does is it gives you a film strip of all of the time it takes for the page to load, and it'll start off white and slowly get up to show you the full website. And if you look at this one, it's really funny. It's white, and it hits about 4 seconds, and then you get the logo, and then it hits about 5 seconds, and then you get some of the content. It actually takes full 10 seconds for the whole page to load, but you get most of it at about, I think it was 7. So that's really good to look at. And there are things you can do to prevent that really white screen of death at the beginning, which someone will tell you about a bit later. Definitely worth checking out. This one, it's not as good as the other two, but I really like it. It basically tells you how much your site will cost. I'm not going to type it in because it takes a really long time for some reason, but it gives you a breakdown of how much your site costs in different countries based on data usage and things like that. For mobile, I think this is really important. You've got to remember that your customers are using your website and it costs them. So think about your target audience and think about how much your website costs for them to download. Really important. I saw one that came up to like $1 somewhere here, which is pretty funny. Don't do that. That's bad. So how do we fix it? Before I pass on to Dan, and he's going to talk you through the actual performance fixes you can make, I just wanted to finish on this. A few of us went to CSS Conf earlier in the year, which is really great. And I highly...
Got 2 people who are really late, so I just want to point it out.
Really late, guys.
Yeah.
Have a seat.
Shall we go to the naughty corner?
Yes.
Yeah. It was a really good conference, so you should come next time. We'll have a bit of a posse go. But he talked a lot about performance, and he said this kind of speed rarely happens by mistake, which for me, it's really important for everyone to think, especially if you're new at playing with web performance. If you put your website into web page test or Google and it comes back as really bad, don't feel bad. That's why you have things you can do. And I'd be surprised if you build a website and it loaded in like 1 second straight away, especially if it's got like pictures and stuff on it. You do have to put effort in to get really good page speed. So think about it. Don't be sad that you didn't do a good job, because all my websites take forever to load until I try to make them load fast. So I thought, good to remember. Now, passing over to Dan to talk to you about actual performance.